This episode is in continuation of the previous one. Here, we're going to continue the conversation and talk about what our views are. How can we deal with this issue of racism on a personal level? If you haven't listened to part one yet, I highly suggest going back and checking that out. Without further ado, here we go.
I love how you say you can't fuck your way out of
Yeah.
racism. And it makes me think of a relationship I had with an older white man. That was an adventure.
Uh,
An older white American. That was really an adventure. We met in Tulum. And I think the only reason we could have connected was because I, again, this is, I think, maybe some of the danger of not being aware of racial things is, I consider myself a spiritual person and I like to believe in unity and everything. But the fact of the matter is, not everybody is operating from that place, whether it's conscious or
hmm
unconscious. And I mean, both sides, both the person who probably has more privilege and the person who has less can unconsciously be still creating that dynamic. And so we were able to connect because I believed spiritually we're aligned. So race, age, nationality, what does that matter? But we're still humans, no matter how spiritually enlightened we are, we're still humans. We're still humans with our specific lived
hmm
experiences. But I also think on a deeper level, with the experiences, the energies, and whatever sort of spiritual thing I don't fully understand about our ancestors. And I think that played up in my relationship with this
hmm
person in two ways. One way was I was also, so we'd also been working together. Um, and I was working in his company. And I remembered at the time the company was in a growth state. So I came in at a growth state and I was to be helping with marketing. And there were two other women who were coming in, who happened to be white women, one American, one European
hmm
woman, I think German, who were coming in different sectors. In terms of the day-to-day involvement and being with the business, I was the only person who was there, and I had just taken on a role as just basic marketer. All I thought, I just came in, I did my work, and I did what I could do, but I wasn't trying to create a space for myself in the company per
Yeah.
se. These women weren't yet working with the company, and for the months that I was there, actually didn't really work with the company. They were just talking about working with the company. But they came in presenting, hey, I'm going to come in as VP of this and VP of that and all of this sort of stuff. And I remember looking at it and saying to myself, wow, why didn't I think of coming in as VP of something? And it was just a clear thing for me. The person who is there actually working is just like happy to get whatever. And I'm actually very skilled and I have great
hmm
experience in marketing. But these people who haven't come in yet, are put in this space for themselves. And I realized, oh, okay, I think this is a thing that has to do with just how I'm socialized. They're socialized to just be that much more audacious, whether or not they actually have the skill or have proven themselves.
hmm
And I am socialized to prove myself and not necessarily ask for too much in a certain sense. And maybe because unconsciously I'm working for a white man. Perhaps if I was working for a black man, I would have asked, or a black woman, maybe. But I think on a subconscious level, even my whatever I feel racially was activated. Um, and that relationship ended and it was problematic for a couple of reasons, but it opened my eyes really to some ingrained, I'm going to call them microaggressions, because you can't really say for sure if it's fully racially motivated, but there's certain things that happen in the dynamics with this man and also white woman friends of his and stuff that made me really wonder if they would have treated a white woman the way they had treated me. I don't think they would have. I really don't think they would have. And some of it could just be race, some of it could be cultural differences, it could be a lot of intersectional stuff. But basically the point is, I agree with you. You can't fuck your way out of racism. You have to face the stuff. And in this relationship with this old white man, one of the things I was very disappointed in was he never wanted to talk about racial issues. No, I was never talking about racial issues from a place of
Mm-hmm.
blame, but I was talking about it from a place of, hey, as someone who is here and saying you want to understand my heart and my emotions, I'm trying to explain to you why I don't feel as confident as these other women to show up. I just want you to understand, it's part of how as a black person I've been generally thought that I'm under. And it's like he would just brush it off and be like, oh, black people just always having these kind of arguments. And it's not even true. Nobody's looking at it that way. Da, 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 da. And for me, I cannot be with you as a white person if you can't look at that. And even one of my most enlightened white woman friends I have, she has said to me, Cherise, I don't care how enlightened a white person is, there's always going to be a little bit of racism in any American because that's just baked into our system. And I remember just being able to feel safe with her, even if she has her little racist ways, because she could at least
Yeah.
acknowledge that, you know? She could at least acknowledge that. But it's sort of like, oh no, it doesn't exist attitude. That's not safe because just the fact that you're fucking me doesn't mean that you actually respect me and see me as as the beauty, like in my fullness,
Yeah.
basically.
I love how you brought the idea of it doesn't exist or whether or not people are conscious of it. I think we're not conscious of it. I still think that there's so much that I'm not conscious of. And so I cannot blame the white person or any people from any class for not being aware of things. But it is still a choice to
Mm-hmm.
stay unaware, right? Especially when
Mm-hmm.
somebody brings it up to you. And
Mm-hmm.
speaking now from my experience, because I can say, oh, the white people should have done this and the white people should have done that. Yeah, I agree. They should have, or they should look at it. But I can't force them to, right? And I can't. But what I've learned for myself is I need to own my place, right? As you said, they came in confident and called themselves VP of this and VP of that. Something that came to me this weekend was that I've been existing within the margins. So there are these lines of, these are the rules and these are the positions that certain people have, or these are the ideas that certain people have. And you got to just like find your little space in these ideas that are already there. And I do not create my own margins. I'm not in creation of it. I'm in consumption of it. And even as woke and as out there and as outspoken that I am, this is still playing a role. And then this morning, my partner was talking
Mm-hmm.
about laws and his job and stuff like that. And he was saying that the way he sees it is you need to use the laws as a tool and not as a limitation for you. And that was
Mm.
100% what I meant with the margins, right? If there's a law there, for me, it's stop, don't go. Do not pass go, do not collect 200.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really okay. How I've noticed is specifically white people, they'll see that and say, how can I walk around that? How can I use this barrier to my advantage?
But we've been taught to stay within the barrier.
Yes. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
I can look at it as, oh my God, Sheedia, you should have known this. You should have, you speak about all these things, about challenging the norms, about, creating your own way, all this stuff. You should have known. Truth is, I can look at it that way, or I can look at it as my ancestors were beaten and killed, or at least saw people being killed for trying to not exist within the margins. And so we've
Yeah.
been conditioned to stay within those margins. There is a fear that is not even mine,
that comes from existing outside of them, of trying to even look at another way. You add to that, you add the strict religious upbringing that I had to it, where I was threatened with hell and sin and those type of things, where there'll be gnashing of teeth and it's so hot, hotter than anything you've experienced. Now I'm a product of being afraid of breaking, not even breaking a rule, but looking at a different way to approach a rule or a law. And so I don't even try. And obviously, if even if you try, there's a chance that it's not going to work for you. But if you look at it specifically, like if you look at the stereotypical white person, they're always trying to find a way to make taxes work for them. They're trying to find a way to make
Mm-hmm.
immigration laws work for them. They're trying to find a way to build in places they shouldn't build, to
Yeah.
all of that. They're always challenging the laws and the rules and what exists. Now there is, yeah, go ahead.
Because it's safer to do so for them, you know. It's not. Yeah. It's safer to do so. You know, I've been watching. It's funny. I've never watched Sex and the City
Ugh,
until recently. So I recently watched the entire
huh.
season
I've never seen it.
in the last couple of months. And it's an older show, I think back from the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it obviously has stuff that just highlights some of the racial insensitivities. I remember one scene where Carrie, who is the main character, white woman, was caught by a cop smoking weed on the
Mm-hmm.
corner. And he put her in a car, and her friends came and told him, oh, she was just smoking weed because her boyfriend broke up with her by post-it. And she showed him the post-it note that the boyfriend had written, I can't do this, and had left it on her laptop. And the cop let her
Mm-hmm.
go. And I just looked at that and I was like, wow, that is not what would have happened to a black
Yep.
person. And so and so you see, for a white person it's more of a, life is more of a game, not necessarily life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have that freedom, as you said, to play around in that way. No, to some degree, some level, the violence against bodies still
Yeah.
exists. And we also have more liberties and freedoms. But what you said is we've still been conditioned with some of that fear in so many different
Mm-hmm.
ways. Um, and that affects us. That definitely affects us. I want to bring it around to us possible solutions, because I think the solution is going to happen more on a community level than solely an individual level. On the individual level, yes, each and every one of us, let's question how much we can claim our sovereignty. Meaning, I understand that I am a divine spark and I have as much right to co create my life as anyone
Mm-hmm.
else, regardless of the color of my skin. That's irrelevant. Just like everyone else, I'm a soul that's incarnate here with same access to God, and I can create everything, anything I want. So, on an individual level, that's where we can start. And I'll tell you, there have been ways that I've gotten around laws and that sort of stuff as well, purely by what I would call grace and magic, because I just didn't allow it to
Mm-hmm.
affect me. I just didn't think about the limitations. But at the same time, because some of this is really deep in our subconscious as as descendants of enslaved people, we may not always even know what's available to us to ask
Yes.
for. And I feel like on a community level, then it becomes great for Black people to serve Black people. With my public speaking coaching, I started focusing specifically on Black women because through training them, it's interesting. A lot of Black women were attracted to me because I was a Black woman coach online, that in an online space where they didn't see many Black women public speaking coaches. So they identified with me just because I was a Black woman. But also, a lot of them were American. And I could see how my privilege of growing up in a predominantly Black country could actually help them to even have more confidence with how they express themselves, because I didn't have quite the same hang-ups that they had about how they express themselves, because I didn't have such a limiting experience of my
Yeah.
blackness. So that's another way that we can start to find solutions, where black on black support,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I would think a third way that we can start to find solutions of this is our white allies with more privilege. Even if, I'm not saying you have to go out in the street and parade, but even in your personal relationships, just question the dynamics of power and privilege. One of the things that I wish my partner could have done, this older white man I was dating, when we were having discussions, I don't know if he could understand how terrifying it was for me to have a discussion with an older white man.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm seeing him as a spirit and we're connected spiritually and all of that kind of stuff, I I am not as trained as him to express my point confidently without fear of
Yes.
retribution. So he would very easily dominate the conversations. And I just feel like, for people with more privilege in our personal relationships, to be aware of that. And as I say that, it's not just white people to people of color. I think, we can have different privileges for different reasons. As I'm thinking about it now, I know I have some friendships where I'm privileged in being a good communicator, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote. But I'm still working on it, where I will naturally dominate conversation because I just kind of expect people to be on my level, not recognizing that maybe they're not as comfortable communicating for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And so, yeah, the solutions goes from internal to interracial to intraracial to also interracial, where it's like, what can you do on the inside to claim your
Mm-hmm.
sovereignty as a piece of God, as a piece of source energy, but also understanding your humanity? How can you help your fellow brother feel more confident in themselves and build confidence together? And then thirdly, as someone who has more privilege because you're lighter skinned, how can you also just, even in your workspace, your personal space, or if you want to do it on a world stage, help to create space for um, everybody to come up to an equitable
Yeah.
level? Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And also, I would call out the white people specifically, because I realize that we tiptoe around that topic. Like, white people, y'all be hurting us with your little comments, your little things that you feel like, oh no, I didn't mean it that way. Oh no, stop making a big deal out of things. Those things hurt people, right? And so we got to start explaining that and saying it with our chest up. Now, I also say that with this compassion and this importance of safety in that, even what I just said,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not safe to always speak up. It really is not. Like, you could
Exactly.
literally be deaded for that. But when you feel like, hey, I can do something in this situation as a black person, call out the people then. Because if we just stay quiet, nothing's going to change either.
Well, talking about safety, let's go back to what you said at the beginning. We then have to really nurture internal safety
Yeah.
first and foremost, because whether or not it's physically safe, so maybe, yes, somebody isn't going to kill you, or maybe somebody isn't going to excommunicate you, that doesn't mean that it cannot feel completely triggering to your nervous
Mm-hmm.
system to approach something that has felt dangerous to it, someone's words or comments, or just someone's appearance triggering a feeling of
Yeah.
danger in you. That's going to be challenging. And so the thing is going to have to be internal safety first. And what's been helping me recently with internal safety is my spirituality helps a lot. And my spirituality is not just for the sake of saying I'm spiritual. My spirituality is a lived
Mm-hmm.
experience. I have lived the experience of manifesting things that I need. I've lived the experience of asking the universe, and somehow what I ask magically
Mm-hmm.
shows up. And basically, the belief that I go by that keeps me safe is, it's Ask and I will receive. And that's something that had made me feel really safe this week. Like, what's safer than ask and you will receive?
Hmm.
Because sometimes, we are looking for safety in our romantic partnerships or in our friendships or in our work or in all of that stuff. And those things are always transient, always, always, always
Mm-hmm.
transient. No matter what we say, they will end at some point. And so I've really been questioning this idea of safety because I've had so much transience in my life over the last 4 years. I mean, I'm a nomad. I don't have a home base. I make new friends every month, every couple of months. I'm always creating something new work wise. So literally, there is a lot of instability in a lot of areas of my life. And I've been feeling unstable and I've been crying out to my understanding of God, like, how can I feel safe? Please show me how to feel safe. And really trying to heal the wound that's been left by my family of making me feel very unsafe with the way they treated me. And I got this response: what is safer than ask and you will receive? And as
Hmm.
I take that point of view and I look back over the past 4 years, I've asked for Airbnbs and I've manifested that. I've asked for friends and I've manifested that. I've asked for money to make a plane and I've manifested it. I've asked for so many things and it shows up,
Mm-hmm.
right? If my focus is just on what, oh my gosh, I don't have, I'm so unsafe, it's going to be harder for me to even focus on what I want to create. So
Yeah.
the point of this is, let's build internal safety with ourselves and our understanding of a higher power if you have that belief system, because that's going to make it easier to have the tough conversations in community without necessarily feeling like you are specifically being attacked, or even if your nervous system does get rattled, that you have also learned ways to regulate yourself,
Yeah.
um, or to co-regulate in safe company.
Yeah. You know what comes to mind as you say that is how I've been taught not to ask. And I think this is a common thing
You mentioned this.
in Black communities all around the world, like Caribbean and in the African diaspora, let's put it that way, is we're taught not to ask. And this is not just an experience that I've learned within myself. It's an experience that I mean, not experience that I've had myself, but it's the experience I've even seen on TV, with Black people telling their kids, don't ask anybody for anything. So even that, they're safe. What's safer than ask and you shall receive? Well, even asking is unsafe.
Can be
Yeah.
hard. Oh my gosh. Actually, Shady, you're reminding me. So I've had in and outs with my family for many years. And there was one point when I was off to school in the US. And I guess I was kind of half in with my family at this point. But I was trying to raise money through a GoFundMe because school, I was on a scholarship, but it was, I still had to pay for my
Hmm.
resources and I was studying design and wood is expensive. Um, and I was working part time and I was really overwhelmed. So I did a GoFundMe to ask for
Hmm.
support for my studies. My mother called me and shamed me for it. She basically said, Sharice, you're going to make people think that your family doesn't take care of you. Like, she's like, my friend sent this to me and I'm so ashamed that you're out here just begging for money. And I broke down because I'm like, I'm here struggling and you're basically shaming me for asking for
For
help
trying to find a way
from
out
people who,
of the struggle.
for trying to
Yeah.
find a way out. So when you said that, it brought that memory back, and I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. We are shamed, and especially, I think, I don't know about the Dutch culture, but there's something about the British influenced culture which is all about appearances and
Mm.
poise and being proper. I mean, I was a pageant queen, so I know all this stuff, right? And it means that there's also a falseness where vulnerability isn't respected. It's allowed to be
Mm.
vulnerable. You have to always be
Yeah,
strong.
that's Dutch.
If you show vulnerability, it's wellness. Like, you need to be totally on point all the time. You can't show your weaknesses.
Mm.
And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and it trickles into, I think, even personal interpersonal relationships. I'm having a situation right now, like a dissolution of a lover friend situation. And one of the things that has come up is my friend is just really uncomfortable with the way I express my emotions. No, I want to be clear. I am not never expressing my emotions in an abusive way to
Mm-hmm.
somebody. I'm always talking about my experience, but it makes people uncomfortable when they're not used to doing that for
Yeah.
themselves. And I'm starting to realize that because I've been out in the world on my own and I've been in all these healing circles and all that stuff, it's so normal to me to just be real about your emotions because I understand that it's a part of the process of healing. Like, I'm not trying to be stuck there. But I come back to Jamaica, which I'm visiting right now, and I'm engaging with people from my circle, and I'm realizing, oh right, this is not how people
No.
operate here. People aren't people aren't as open about their emotions here. You are a weirdo to these people. You are a weirdo, you're crazy, you've lost your mind. And I'm just thinking, my goodness, how sad it is that our very
Mm.
humanity has been taken as something to pathologize.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not. And in addition, yeah, we're influenced by the European cultures because the Dutch culture is like that too. The Dutch culture is all about don't be too much, right? Like Dutch people think Americans are too much. There's a TikTok, and the reason why I give that example is there's a TikTok account that I follow. I think it's called Double Dutch, um, where they talk about that, that the Dutch people don't be too much. Stay in your lane, stay small, stay normal. Like that's very strong Dutch culture. And so you add on to that, the need for survival coming out of slavery. I'm not talking about our generation specifically. I'm talking about generations prior coming out of slavery where it's all about survival. You do not have time to go sit and deal with your emotions. But then you combine
Mm-hmm,
those two
mm-hmm,
things now for a black
mm.
experience, somebody in a black body, it's a different thing.
Oh, you mix up two of the worst because you mix the extra, what would you call it? Not poise is the word, but the
Mm-hmm.
suppression with the kind of like the suppression of emotion from your Dutch side with the I don't even have time to process my
Mm-hmm.
emotions from the black side. My gosh, that is gonna create
Add
disaster.
in the, oh, that happened such a long time ago, slavery. You don't deal with anything. Because it's great and all, that our ancestors were survivors and they had to focus. Like I understand they didn't have time to deal with their emotions, but now we have a lot more privilege than the people did in late 1800s, right? Early 1900s. We have so much more privilege, so much more access, even though we're still marginalized. We can at least make the space.
I love how you brought that up because it is known in psychology that as long as your body feels like it's under threat, it doesn't get to discharge the emotions that it needs to from a
Mm-hmm.
traumatic event. And through my own psychological study, I found, and through my experience, once you feel safe enough is often when floods of things from years potentially get to come out. And I'm remembering there was a Facebook post that I saw once that I commented on where someone was making a comment like, basically, your ancestors, talking about Black people, didn't do all they did for you to just sit down at the house and, cry about your feelings or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I remember commenting and saying, no, my ancestors did all they did to give me the privilege to heal the things that they didn't get the opportunity
Yeah.
to heal. And I think that's something we can also shift to. Sometimes we're like, Black pride and Black excellence and Black magic is all about how can we show up to the best of our ability? Sure. But how about Black magic also being, or Black pride, or Black whatever, Black excellence being, how can I allow myself to sit and to
Mm.
release the pain that no one's got to feel. So it's just been passed down through homophobia, through abuse, through alcoholism, through whatever else. Like, how about I get to do that with the heritage that they have
Yeah.
given me?
How can I look at the shit and be in the shit in order to move through it? The only way out is through.
Mhm. Yeah, we have to let it
Yeah.
out.
And I know that the
I mean,
amount of things that I've broken and dealt with and alchemized within myself is going to be magic for the next generation. But had I
yeah.
not done it, just like my ancestry had to go through some ugly things in order to do it, and it's often financial that they were like some sort of financial stability that they were chasing. Had they not done that, I would not have some of the benefits that I have today, given that I'm not wealthy at all in regards to
Hmm.
financial wealth, but I am very wealthy emotionally and spiritually.
Well, what's interesting, I'm thinking to a comment I actually wanted to say at the start when I shared the quote from Clarissa Pinkola
Hmm.
Estes about women holding a secret to being exhausted. And I spoke a little bit about it. And
Mm,
basically, you said, wow, girl, you started off deep. And what came to mind was, yeah, that's what happened when you have all the time to dedicate to your
yeah.
healing. And I think I want to acknowledge the privilege I have, not just financially, but through God resourcing me and honoring the fact that I want to focus on my healing. And so providing me with friends
Mm,
or magical Airbnbs or with the education that my parents have given me that makes me very flexible in terms of how I can make money, or the privilege of having internet access that means that I have access to a world market. All of these privileges have given me the opportunity to actually live a very slow life
yeah.
where my priority is my wellness and my well-being, and seeking to be well. And how do I know I'm not well? When my relationships are falling apart, I know I'm not well. When my finances are falling apart, I know I'm not well. When everything is just not lining up in a way that feels at ease, I'm not
Mm,
well. And so I guess I want to acknowledge that privilege and also encourage people to think about, if you're interested in breaking down some of the issues that you may have on a personal level or even an intergenerational level, see what privilege you may
hmm.
have to make time for it. Because there was one point in my journey where I actually organized, and I do actually still mentally organize it, but I don't have to be as strict with it now. I organized my week where I only allowed myself to work 3 days out of the week, so that the rest of the days I could cry. Like, when
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
serious, I'm not
I've
even
done an
joking.
entire
I
week of just like I've
the
done years of not doing anything and just dealing with my mental problems.
exactly. And I'm happy that I did that because it gave me space to process decades of stuff. Decades.
Hmm.
I was in counseling, and I was also reading a lot of psychology books and praying a lot and all of that. But to really confront decades of
Yeah,
trauma that I'd experienced. Um, so sometimes it may not be accessible to everyone based on their survival level or state. Partially for me also is I'm a little bit extreme where it's like I'm sort of willing to go hungry to figure out what I need to figure out to be
same.
well, and as opposed to pushing myself to
Hmm.
burnout. So, I can be a little bit extreme in that regard, but I also find that the universe honors and meets me. So if I tell the universe, again, it's this ask and you receive. I tell the universe, like, I really want to be able to focus on being well. Can you support me in doing that? I'll find it. Like, for example, I haven't paid rent for the past 3 months through just friends opening up their
Hmm.
homes to me. And I'm a nomad, so I move around, so it's fine. but it's just been a thing where I actually needed a lot of space in the last 3 months to handle some emotional, personal stuff, because I was very sick, and my becoming sick showed me that things were out of whack, and I've been supported. So sometimes it may feel like things are not accessible to us, but I would encourage us to also, with whatever tiny faith we have, to ask, how is it possible that I could do this thing that feels important to me to
Hmm.
do? Yeah.
I would I would also add to that that not everyone needs that extreme space to deal with things.
Yeah.
I think, if we talk specifically about transatlantic slavery and the trauma that came with that, everybody carries that trauma in one way or another, but not everybody carries it at the same level as everyone else. Just like my trauma of being raped and the depths of PTSD that I experienced might not be the same for someone else. Just like my issues with racial trauma is not the same even for my siblings, you know? So I think it's important to say that as well, and also important to acknowledge both
Yeah.
parts, right? There are people that need that space that might not be able to get it, no matter how hard. Um, I wouldn't say no matter how hard they try, but they really can't get it. Also, based because of the pain that they're experiencing, they don't have the mental clarity to get the space that they need. But also, not everybody needs it. So it's a thing from
Yeah.
person to person, and I would just say just do your best. Like, do your best, and God will do the rest. That's something we used to say. But we've gone a long time on this episode. Um I think it's a good place to end. Did you have anything unsaid?
Yeah, I think so. No, I think it's all been said.
Okay. Good, deep conversation. Would love to hear what you think. Spotify is our main place where you can listen and leave your comments or anything like that. But also, like, you can reach out to me on social media at Hey Sheedia everywhere. I will leave the my username in the description of this podcast. And see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye, everyone.